Hello everyone. So this is another lecture video. So as we have decided, we will proceed with asynchronous session. So our topic for this lecture video will cover Board of Directors and Trustees, Board of Trustees, as well as the rules which will govern yung mga officers ng isang corporation. So we will continue from the last synchronous session that we had. So we have here the second paragraph na of section 23 of the Revised Corporation Code, which reads as follows. So medyo mahaba yung kaya naputol yung discussion natin last time because medyo mahaba yung provision ng section 23. So tuloy na natin siya ngayon. Meron tayong isang provision na napag-usapan, meron isang portion rather, ng section 23 na pag-usapan. Yan, yung the right to vote and be voted for ng mga stockholders. Although meron tayong special set of rights, the exclusive right rather, to vote and be voted for, which are the exclusive rights granted sa mga tinatawag na holders ng founder share. So we already discussed this one. Kaya ituloy na natin sa pasunod na portion, which is, ito na nga. Ang sabi niya, nitong second part ng section 23, at all elections of directors or trustees, all elections, bawat election daw, every time daw na maghahalal ng director, ng board of directors or board of trustees ng isang korporasyon, bago daw mangyari yan, there must be present either in person or through a representative authorized by written proxy, the owners of a majority of the outstanding capital stock, or if there's no capital stock, a majority of the members entitled to vote. So hanggang doon muna tayo. Sinasabi ng section 23 na bago ang mga stockholders ay mag-decide, bago sila mag-conduct ng kanilang election ng board of directors or board of trustees, dapat umattend muna, meron silang isiset na meeting, at dapat doon sa meeting na yan, kung saan gagawin yung election ng board of directors or ng board of trustees, dapat present, dapat dumating daw. Either in person or through proxy. Pag person, ikaw mismo, yung stockholder mismo yung pupunta or a-attend doon sa itinakdang araw kung kailan gagawin yung election ng board of directors or board of trustees. Alam natin kung kailan ginagamit yung term na director o kailan ginagamit yung term na trustees. No? Pinag-usapan na natin yan during our live sessions. So either in person, attend ka, ikaw mismo, yung stockholder mismo, or through a representative. Para kang merong agent, kumbaga may agent na pupunta on your behalf. So hindi ikaw yung pupunta, hindi yung stockholder on the record ang pupunta. Merong ibang pupunta para sa kanya. Pero kailangan niyang mag-issue itong stockholder on record, kailangan niya mag-issue ng authority, written authority, which we call a proxy. Proxy ba? Parang proxy sa binyag or proxy sa kasal, di ba? Pag hindi makaka-attend yung ninong or yung nina doon sa binyag or yung sa kasal, nagpapadala ng proxy. Diba? Siya yung humahalili, kumbaga siya yung representative, siya yung replacement doon sa taong hindi makaka-attend, doon sa ninang na hindi makaka-attend. So magpapaproxy ka. So dito, parang ganun yung sistema. Merong stockholder na hindi makaka-attend doon sa itinakdang araw para sa eleksyon ng mga directors or ng mga trustees. Pero gusto niya pa rin i-exercise yung right niya kasi isa to sa mga karapatan, di ba, ng isang stockholder, yung karapatan niya na bumoto, iboto o maiboto o bumoto bilang parte ng Board of Directors or ng Board of Trustees. Kaya lang, hindi nga siya available for whatever reason. Hindi lang talaga siya makakapunta on that day. May prior commitment siya, for example, or meron siyang emergency or medically indisposed siya. Pero gusto niya pa rin exercise yung right na yun. So ang gagawin niya, maghahanap siya ngayon ng taong pinagkakatiwalaan niya who may or may not be stockholder in that corporation, maaari din naman, may or may not be an incumbent director, may or may not be an incumbent officer of that corporation. So, free siya to choose kung sino ang kanyang pipiliin bilang representative to attend that election of directors or trustees, as long as meron siyang written proxy. Don't worry, no, kasi may trabaho dito yung corporate secretary. So yung corporate secretary, i-check niya kung tawag dito, namimit ba yung mga requirements ng batas, yung substance and yung form ng nire-require ng batas pagdating sa mga uma-attend by proxy. Kaya most of the time, ang mga stockholders, although not required by law, pero most of the time, ang mga gumaganap, no? Gumaganap parang artista lang. Yung mga corporate secretary ng mga korporasyon ay usually lang naman ay mga abogado, ng mga lawyers, kasi isa to sa mga trabaho nila. But they have to preside over, not preside, they have to attend and assist the board of directors in the conduct of their proceedings, including the conduct of the election. So, matrabaho to on the part of the corporate secretary kasi kailangan niya i-check one by one kung yung proxy ba na sinasubmit itong mga stockholder na umattend, ay hindi makaka-attend rather, ay sufficient in substance and in form. So, kapag nag-attend ka through proxy, it is as if andun ka na rin. Parang andun ka in spirit, kumbaga, nakarating ka on paper. Bibilangin ka as if andun ka. So sabi dito, again, bago daw magkaroon ng election ng mga directors or ng mga trustees in a stock corporation, dapat makarating, dapat maging present, whether in person or through proxy, ang majority, nakabilang na tayo, ang majority, owners of the majority of the outstanding capital stock, or in case na walang itisay na stock corporation, still a majority of the members entitled to vote. Para siya majority. So whether stock corporation ka or non-stock corporation, so in case of a stock corporation, ang requirement bago na magkaroon ng election, dapat majority of the owners of the outstanding capital stock or owners of the majority of the outstanding capital stock, or in case of a non-stock corporation, majority of the members should be present, whether in person or through the issuance of a proxy. Ang tawag natin dyan sa portion na yan, mula di yung sinasabi niyang majority of those entitled to vote in a stock corporation or non-stock corporation, ang tawag natin dyan ay quorum. So, ibig sabihin, bago daw yung mga quorum. Ulitin natin. Para hindi maguluhan. Quorum. Yan. Yung quorum na yan, maraming beses natin siyang ma-encounter kasi maraming sitwasyon kung kailangan merong quorum. Pero in a nutshell, pag sinabing quorum, dapat bago magsimula yung conduct ng business ng isang korporasyon through either the directors or through the stockholders, dapat may quorum. So kahit na gustong-gusto noong mga stockholders or ng mga members na mag-conduct ng election of the Board of Directors and the Board of Trustees. Kung walang quorum, kunyari, pinetsa nila ng, let's say, June 1, 2021, gaganapin ang election, so magpapadala ka ng notice sa mga stockholders on record at saka yung mga members on record. So you inform them na on June 30, gaganapin ang election of directors. So those who will not be able to attend but still want to exercise their right to vote, then you can see the attached proxy. Meron silang ina-attach na proxy dyan. Fill up ninyo yung proxy na yan. You should name kung sino gusto yung representative and ina-authorize ninyo to attend on your behalf, etc. etc. So meron dyang naka-attach na proxy form. Tinatawag lang proxy form. Yan. So on June 30 rather, on June 30, if walang majority, dumating in person or in proxy, i-check yan, taga-check ng attendance yung corporate secretary. Bibilangin niya kung ilan yung present in person and through proxy. Then, pag sinabi niya, wala po tayong quorum kasi hindi po majority ang naka-attend. Kung walang quorum, they cannot proceed with the election of the directors or the trustees. So, ganun yung konsepto ng quorum. Para bago pa tayo magsimula, para hindi masayang yung ating panahon, magbilang muna tayo. At kung walang quorum, we cannot proceed with the business of the corporation. So, ganun din. Actually, applicable din to sa board of meetings ng board of directors before sila mag-start ng meeting nila. The presiding, yung nagpa-preside ng meeting, we call that person the chairman or the chairperson para walang gender bias. Yung chairperson, bago siya magsimula, sabihin Mr. or Miss Corporate Secretary, do we have a quorum? Kailan niya itanong yon? So sinabi ng Corporate Secretary, yes, Madam or Mr. Chairperson, we have a quorum. So since you have a quorum, we can proceed with the conduct of today's meeting. Ganun sila. Let us proceed with the reading of the agenda. Ganyan-ganyan kung ano naman sasabihin nila dyan. Kaya sila magtuloy. Pero pag sinabi ng Corporate Secretary, nagtanong yung Chairperson sa kanya, Corporate Secretary, do we have a quorum? Pag nagbilang yung Corporate Secretary, sabi Chairperson, we do not have a quorum. So, since we do not have a quorum, we cannot proceed with the business of today's meeting. Bawal sila magtuloy kasi walang quorum. So yung quorum, yung susi, kumbaga, whether ang nagpupulong ay yung mga stockholders kasi meron silang election na gagawin, or ang pagpupulong ay yung mga board of directors or board of trustees, then kailangan may quorum bago sila magsimula doon sa mga bagay na kanilang napag-usapan, gustong pag-usapan, na pagkasundo ang pag-uusapan nila. Sa isang stock corporation, hindi by head ang binibilang, hindi siya by per individual. Unlike in a stock corporation, since wala nga silang stock, their capital is not divided into shares of stock, so ang nangyayari kapag na stock corporation ang pinag-uusapan, membership, meaning pa-isa-isa. So kung merong, let's say, 500 members in that non-stock corporation, then the quorum is 251. 251 yung quorum. 500. Individual yung pagbibilang. Pero kung ang pinag-uusapan, ang subject matter natin ay stock corporation, then ownership of the majority of the outstanding capital stock. So, if isa lang yan, for example, isa lang siya, owner of the majority of the outstanding capital stock, then meron na agad quorum. Kasi yun yung binibilang. Hindi binibilang kung ilan kayo. Ang binibilang ay kung yung may-ari, yung mga tao o yung mga taong nagmamay-ari ng majority ng outstanding capital stock ay present during that meeting, then merong quorum. Applicable lang ito sa stockholders, sa level ng mga stockholders. Sa level ng board of directors, hindi ganon. Ang quorum ay per head, no? per member of the board of directors. So whether you own the majority or not, since you are only entitled to one vote kapag ikaw ay miyembro na ng board of directors or ng board of trustees, iba yung bilangan doon. Pero dito, to determine the quorum, sa level ng mga stockholders, then kahit tatlo lang kayo, pero you own the majority of the outstanding capital stock, tas ang absent ay 5, meron ng quorum. Sa stockholders. Okay? So for example, para maintindihan, ang stockholders natin ay si A, si B. Hindi director sa stockholder. Si D, E, si F, at saka si G. A is the owner of 30%. B also the owner of 20. C is the owner of 10, 15. D is 10, 10, 50, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 5. Tama ba? 30, 40, 50. 15, 5, 20. Okay, 50 na. So, ilan sila? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. 5G. Kung ang present ay si A, si B, at saka si C, majority na yan. 55% na yung ownership nila. Ang hindi present ay si D, E, F, and G, 4. So, kung bibilangin mo siya individually, 3 ang present, 4 ang absent. 3 present, 4 ang absent. Pero, since the 3 who are present are the owners of majority of the outstanding capital stock, then there's already a quorum. Kahit 3 lang sila. Pero kung ang pinag-uusapan natin dito ay non-stock corporation, say, wala kang titignan ng mga percent. Kasi non-stock corporation, hindi nga divided into shares. So, anong percent ang pinag-uusapan mo dyan? So, wala. Sa non-stock corporation, ang mangyayari ngayon ay per head. So, kung si A, B, and C lang ang umattend, at si D, E, F, and G ay hindi umattend, then walang quorum. Kasi 3 out of 7 lang ang umattend. Hindi 3 out of 4. 3 out of 7. So, it's not a majority of the members. So, since there's no quorum, they cannot proceed with the business for that day. Okay? So, hopefully, natindihan natin yung portion na. Importante itong quorum na ito, the concept of quorum. Okay? Let's go to the second half of this provision. Sabi pa niya, when so authorized in the bylaws or by a majority of the board of directors, the stockholders or members may also vote through remote communication or in absentia. So dito meron actually medyo bagong provision ito na in-introduce. Sinisimok ako, wait lang. So, ano yung sinasabi ko bago kong pause? About remote communication. So, titignan mo kung ina-allow ba yung remote communication. So, as a general rule, hindi siya allowed. If you want to vote, you have to appear in person or through proxy. So, pag sinabi ditong remote communication, so attend ka via Zoom, ganun, via MS Teams, for example, or any other platform, similar platform. In absentia, dito yung voting in absentia, absentee voting. Nag-vote ka pero you are not voting on site. You are not voting on site. ang yung mga OFW natin, diba? They are not here but they are still allowed to vote outside. Kung nasaan man sila naroon, doon sila mag-practice ng kanilang right to vote. So that's voting in absentia. Voting through remote communication, nakita kanila, they are malamang through electronic means din yung pagboto. Malamang lang naman. I'm not saying na yun talaga. Okay. So yung remote communication, voting by remote communication or voting in absentia, is as a general rule not allowed. Not allowed. Kailan to pwede? What are the exceptions? Ibig sabihin, kailan ina-allow ang voting by remote communication or voting in absentia? Kapag nakalagay siya sa bylaws. Kasi yung conduct ng election, nakalagay yun sa bylaws actually. So, tignan mo sa bylaws, kung actually wala pa tayong pinag-usapan about bylaws. Pero pwede mo tignan doon, maraming information about the corporation na makikita mo sa bylaws. And usually, kambal sila. No? Kambal ko yung articles of incorporation at yung bylaws. So usually, if I request sa mga clients namin na pahiram po ng copy ng bylaws, kaakibat ng panghihingi na yon, ang copy ng bylaws ay yung copy ng kanilang articles of incorporation. And in fact, kapag nag-incorporate kasi yung isang corporation, nag-organize isang corporation, sabay yan nangyayari. Usually, sabay nangyayari. Articles of incorporation and bylaws. Anyway, if the bylaws already provides that voting by remote communication or voting by in absentia is allowed, then it is allowed. Kasi nakalagay siya sa bylaws. Or by a majority vote of the board of directors or the board of trustees, in that case, majority of the board of directors and the board of trustees. So they have to come up with a resolution allowing for the voting through remote communication or voting in absentia. So, either nasa bylaws mo na siya, ibig sabihin na integrated na siya, acknowledged na, part na siya ng sistema ng korporasyon na pwede kayong bumoto through remote communication or trial in absentia. Trial. Maling trial. Voting in absentia. Pero meron kasing trial in absentia. Pag yung akusado hindi na attend ng kanyang hearing, pwedeng magtuloy yung kaso kahit wala siya. Ang tawag doon ay trial in absentia. Kaya nabanggit ko yung trial in absentia. Anyway, walang kinalaman yun sa pag-uusap natin ngayon. General rule, voting by remote communication or voting in absentia is not allowed. It is allowed only if either one, the bylaws provides for the system of voting, or number two, hindi kailangan sabay, or number two, the board of directors, the board of board of trustees passed a resolution, or they enacted a resolution allowing for the conduct of election by casting your vote through remote communication or through vote in absentia. Okay? Provided that the right to vote through such modes, which are yung by remote communication or through in absentia, may be exercised in corporations vested with public interest, notwithstanding the absence of provision in the bylaws of such corporation. Ito nga sinabi nga dito sa 23, portion na ng 23, kapag ang korporasyon is a corporation vested with public interest, this is not the first time that we have that I will mention, public interest corporation. So marami ng beses na pinagbanggit ito ng corporation ko. Sana naalala natin kung ano ibig sabihin ng corporations vested with public interest. So ang sabi niya dito, if a corporation is vested with public interest, yung right to vote through electronic means or electronic communication or remote communication, or right to vote in absentia, is allowed. Allowed siya kahit hindi mo siya ilagay sa bylaws. Kapag ang corporation ay corporation vested with public interest. A stockholder or member who participates to remote communication or in absentia shall be deemed present for the purposes of quorum. Alam natin kung ano ibig ng quorum, di ba? Ito yung magsasabi or magdidikta kung maaari ba o hindi na tumuloy ang mga stockholder or mga members sa mga sa meeting na kanilang plinano for that day. Sabi dito, bibilangin mo as present kasi yung mga gustong bumoto through remote communication or gusto nilang bumoto in absentia, hindi sila physically present. They are somewhere else. Pero gusto nilang mag-participate, gusto nilang exercise yung kanilang right to vote. Pero wala sila dun sa site kung saan gaganapin yung election. Pero allowed nga, sabi ng Section 23, allowed yan. At sabi pa nga ng Section 23 pa din, na yung mga nag-decide na sila ay boboto through remote communication or sila ay boboto in absentia, then they are still counted for purposes of quorum. Bilang sila, present sila, kahit sila ay wala doon physically. But they are again, just like a proxy, wala sila physically, pero may pupunta on your behalf physically. Kung si X ay hindi makapunta, si Y yung proxy, si X ay wala, pero si Y ay magpupunta doon sa meeting. Sabihin niya may proxy na ni-issue sa akin si X, kaya lang siya makakapunta. So obviously counted na yun kasi may taong pumunta. Pero yung mga naka-remote communication or yung mga naka-in-absentia, wala sila doon. Pero malinaw na sinabi ng portion na ito ng Section 23 na kahit wala sila doon in person or through proxy, they are still counted for purposes of quorum. Again, importante ang quorum para malaman kung tutuloy ba sila o hindi sa mga balak nilang gawin for that day, which under Section 23 ay yung plano nila na bumoto ng mga magiging miyembro ng Board of Directors or ng Board of Trustees. The election must be by ballot if requested by any voting stockholder or member. Pwede kasi kung konti lang naman kayo, pwede taas kamay na lang. Parang classroom setup. Sinong boboto kay X, sinong boboto kay Y, taas kamay. Kay C, sinong gusto siyang maupo bilang miyembro ng Board of Directors, taas kamay. Pwede yun. Pero nakakapagod, especially if you will be voting for 5 members or 7 members or 10 members or maximum of 15 members, then medyo matagal yung magiging proseso. Pwede mo siyang gawing by ballot. So, magbibigay na lang tayo ng papel, parang although hindi ko alam kung nakaabot na kayo ng manual election sa Pilipinas, parang ganun. Bibigyan kayo ng kapirasong papel and you have to write there yung mga gusto mong maupo bilang miyembro ng Board of Directors. So, ganun din, I think, siguro yung past na barangay elections, ginawa natin yun. Naalala ko, naka-duty ako for the past barangay elections. At dahil hindi automated ang barangay elections natin, yung balota binigay and you write the names of those na gusto mong iboto. Sa automated elections kasi nakabilog-bilog lang tayo, parang scannable answer sheet, di ba? Shade mo yung mga bilog para i-record nung counting machine, automatic virtual count, VCFT. Nakalimutan ko na yung pangalan niya, pero yun, binabantayan ko yan dati. Noong 2019 elections natin yung pinakahuli. 2019 elections, automated yun. So by ballot siya. If requested by any stockholder or member, but usually this is by ballot naman talaga. Pero kung 10 lang kayo, diba? Huwag na kayo maglokohan. 10 lang, kaya kayong bilangin eh. Diba? Huwag na tayo magbalot-balot dito. Magbilangan na lang tayo, diretso na. Who is in favor of A, being part of the Board of Directors, taas kamay. Ganun lang yan. O A, payag ka ba na mag-member ka ng board of directors? You can vote for yourself. Wala namang masama to. Pero ang medyo nakakayabang lang if you nominate yourself. Yan, nakakayabang talaga yun. Pero once you have been nominated, no, among the stockholders or among the members na nominee para sa position, para makaupo bilang miyembro ng board of directors or board of trustees, then pwede mo naman iboto yung sarili mo. Wala namang nakakayabang doon. Parang mas kakaiba pa nga na nominado ka pero hindi mo binoto yung sarili mo. Pero yun lang, huwag mong inominate yung sarili mo. Kakaano naman niya. Kakayabang on a certain level. Sabi dito, Section 23 pa rin, in stock corporation, stockholders entitled to vote shall have the right to vote the number of shares of stocks standing in their own names in the stock books of the corporation at the time fixed in the bylaws or where the bylaws are silent at the time of the election. Nasabi dito, kapag stock corporation ka, sabi ko nga sa inyo, hindi by individual yung bilang. Kung ilan yung hawak mo, shares. Yun yung number of votes, actually. So, ibig sabihin, actually may mga paraan to para computein, pero yun yung point ng portion na to ng Section 23. For example, I am the owner of 51%. Then essentially, yung boto ko ay 51% ng mga boto rin. Pero hindi naman ako required na ibigay siya sa isang tawag dito, kandidato lang. Pwede ko siyang pag-iwa-hiwalay. Pero if I will decide, ibigay ko lang sa isa, then so be it. But it's not required. Okay. Sabi dito, sa stockholder, yung stockholder in a stock corporation, kapag boboto siya, ay maaaring una, vote such number of shares for as many persons as there are directors to be elected. So for example, I am the owner of 200 shares. Tapos ang iboboto ay 5 na board of directors. So essentially, I have 200 times 5 kasi 5 yung iboboto. Sabi ng letter A, if you are the owner of 200 shares, you may vote such number of shares for as many persons as there are directors to be elected. So pwede kong piliin si A, 500 votes kay A, kay B. 500 ba sinabi ng example? I don't know. 500 na lang. Kay C, 500 pwede. B, 500. E, 500. Dahil ubos na yung tipa 500 ko, sorry, F, G, H, I, N, J, hindi ako makaboto sa inyo. Or, in letter B, accumulate said shares and give one candidate as many votes as the number of directors to be elected multiplied by the number of shares owned. So, example ko, 500 ba? Nakalimutan ko na kung ilan ba talaga. Let's stick with 500. 500 times 5, that's 2,500. That 2,500 votes you can give to one candidate. Gusto mo kay ilang, then kay ilang lahat. Or letter C, distribute them on the same principle among as many candidates as may be seen fit. So pwede mong ikalat yung 2,500 mo. 2,000 kay A, 199 kay B, 88 kay C, etc. etc. Bahala ka. Pwede mong gawin yun. Provided that the total number of shares cast shall not exceed the number of shares owned by the stockholders as shown in the books of the corporation multiplied by the whole number of directors to be elected. So if you are the owner of 500 shares at 5 lang in voto, then your votes cannot go beyond 2,500 votes kasi 2,500 shares ang meron ka. Yan naman yung huwag kang I don't know, flying voter ba tawag dito? Ano man ang tawag dito? So, huwag mong gawin. Nasosobra yung boto mo. So, bilangin mo, times mo yung ilang shares number, ilan ang number of shares na meron ka, so in our example, 500, times 5, you have 2,500. Make sure that you not go beyond that amount, 2,501. Kunyari, meron ka pang isang gustong ihabol na dagdag, naka 2,500 ka na nga. Either pinagbibigay mo siya equally or kinalat mo or binigay mo lahat sa isang kandidato. So that's it. Don't go beyond the number of shares that you are allowed to vote. Still at Section 23, provided, however, that no delinquent stock shall be voted. We have yet to discuss the issue or the nature or the definition even of a delinquent stock. Pero ang sabi na dito, delinquent stock shall not be voted delinquent. Meron tayong definition kung kailan condition rather, kung kailan nagiging delinquent ang isang stock. Sabi niya dito, unless otherwise provided in the Articles of Incorporation or in the bylaws, members of non-stock corporations may cast as many votes as there are trustees to be elected, but may not cast more than one vote for one candidate. Nominees for directors or trustees receiving the highest number of votes shall be declared elected. So in a non-stock corporation, dahil hindi nga siya bilang on your ownership, by head siya binibilang. So kung merong 10 stockholders, then 10 silang members rather, in a non-stock corporation. Then, for example, umatin silang 10. So ilan ang iboboto? 5. So ilan ang vote na entitled ka? 1 times 5. Kasi nga per individual ang bilang sa mga members ng isang non-stock corporation. So kung 10 sila, A, B, C, D hanggang kay J, at 5 yung iboboto na iboboto as part of the members, as members of the Board of Trustees, then lahat sila may tigil 5 boto. Pero ang rule natin dito, unlike doon sa kanina sa stock corporation, pwede mong i-accumulate. Diba? Yung 2,500 votes ko in our example, earlier, pwede kong ibigay lahat kay X or kay Y or kay Z. Kung gusto ko, ikalat ko siya. 2,000 kay X, 500 kay Y. Allowed yun. But in a non-stock corporation, that is not so allowed. You cannot give more than one vote sa isang candidate. So, ang kailangan mong gawin, maghanap ka ng ibang kandidato or kung wala talaga, don't vote. Diba? Kung sa isang tao ka lang tiwala, sa isang kandidato ka lang, sa isang kandidato lang ang gusto mong maupo, yung 4 wala kang tiwala dun sa 4 na iba or sa iba pang kandidato, kung ilan man sila, then you are allowed to vote you are allowed to cast just one vote. But the prohibition is, under Section 23, is that members in a non-stock corporation cannot cast more than one vote to one candidate. So walang accumulation ng votes dito. Still, at bago pala tayo magtuloy doon, ano ibig sabihin ng delinquent stock? Pag sinabing delinquent stock, matutunan natin in the future ito, no? Kung ano ibig sabihin ng delinquent stock. But in the meantime, para hindi bungi yung ating pag-intindi sa Section 23, nagsisimula siya sa pagiging unpaid. So, ibig sabihin, nag-issue ng shares through subscription. So, naka-subscription agreement with that subscriber. Sabi niya, bibili ako ng 1,000 shares, pero hindi ko pa kayang bayaran lahat yan. I can only pay 50% of it. Then, uunti-untiin ko yung other 50%. I will pay 30% of it again. So 20% na utang niya. So sa books ng isang corporation, subscription receivable natin siya nire-record. Is it delinquent? No, not yet. Unpaid lang siya. So kung unpaid yung stock, so walang prohibition for you to be voted for, vote or be voted for. Kasi unpaid pa lang naman yung shares mo. Pero, for example, dun sa subscription contract kung may nakalagay na petsa, kung kailan mo siya kailangang bayaran. Kasi after 36 months, babayaran mo dapat siya. Nag-lapse in 36 months without you paying, then you may be considered as delinquent. May pa lang, hindi pa siya automatic. Marami kasi kailangan pagdaanan. Bago ang isang unpaid share or unpaid stocks ay ma-convert or ma-consider as delinquent. You have to notify that stockholder who is unpaid, for the portion, remind mo lang siya, tapos mag-demand ka. Remind mo siya na, oy, may utang ka pa, itong 10% ng subscription mo, di ba bayad? Please pay this amount, so yan, so ganun. Or else, we will consider you as a delinquent stockholder. Parang ganun. Kapag ganyan, naging delinquent na siya, again, that's not the entire process na marami tayong pag-uusapan. But that's the spirit behind it. That's the law. That's the principle behind it. Hindi ko mo, ang point ko dito, hindi ko mo unpaid ang shares, automatic delinquent siya. Kailangan maraming may mga pagdadaanan, mga requirement na legal ang ating revised corporation code bago ma-consider as delinquent stock ang unpaid stock. Section 23 provides na yung mga delinquent stock ay hindi pwedeng iboto. Unless otherwise provided in the Articles of Incorporation or in the bylaws, members of a non-stock corporation, ay, natapos na pala natin. If no election is held, walang quorum for example, or the owners of the, or the owners of the majority of the outstanding capital stock or majority of the members entitled to vote are not present in person, kasi sabihin na walang quorum. In person or in proxy, or through remote communication, or voting in absentia, such meeting may be adjourned. Pag sabi adjourned, stop na. Tatanong lang ng president or ng chairperson, o Mr. or Miss Corporate Secretary, do we have a quorum? Ibig sabihin, majority ba? Owners of the majority ba of the outstanding capital stock are nandito? Or majority ba ng mga members ay nandito? Sabihin ng Corporate Secretary, chairperson, based on my count, in person, in proxy, remote communication, and voting in absentia, wala po tayong quorum. Sabihin ng chairperson, since there is no quorum, this meeting is adjourned. Stop na. This meeting is adjourned. Wala tayong magpala dito kasi walang quorum. Okay? So, kapag nagtigil daw, you can, you should proceed or you should continue with what is provided by Section 25, but we will not jump to Section 25. The directors or trustees elected shall perform their duties as prescribed by the law, rules of good corporate governance, and the bylaws of the corporation. Usually the bylaws, ito yung basic, actually medyo pro forma pa nga. Parang kinapi and paste somewhere. Nakalagay doon yung mga magiging trabaho ng president, ng CEO, corporate secretary, ng treasurer. Kapag naglagay pa ka ng ibang position, like the general manager or the auditor, nakalagay doon kung ano yung magiging trabaho. Bukod doon, bukod doon, may iba pang dokumento rather na pwedeng maging basihan kung ano yung magiging trabaho o responsibilidad ng mga directors or trustees. You can refer to the law, the revised corporation code, the issuances of the Securities and Exchange Commission, including the rules of good corporate governance. Again, but the basic document that you can look at kapag gusto mong malaman kung ano bang trabaho ng president in a corporation, staff ng corporate secretary in a corporation, ng mga treasurer in a corporation, you can read what is provided by the bylaws. Although medyo mga bylaws na na-encounter ko dahil sila nga ay pro forma, ay parang hindi masyadong kompleto. So we don't, sa practice namin, we don't use the pro forma bylaws. We come up with our own articles of incorporation and bylaws. Okay. So that's it for election of Board of Directors, Board of Trustees. Okay. So immediately, sabi ng Section 24, immediately after their election, the directors of a corporation must formally organize. So magkakaroon sila ng tinatawag na organizational meeting. Organizational meeting. Kung saan sila ay magboboto among themselves na. So among themselves, magbotohan tayo. Sino ang magiging presidente? Ang requirement para maging president, ikaw ay dapat na director, na boto ka bilang board of member ng board of director. The treasurer. Is it required? Is the treasurer required to be a director? There's no such requirement, but most of the time, the treasurer is also a director. What is required by law is that the treasurer must be a resident of the Philippines. Kailangan, hindi siya pwedeng staying outside the Philippines most of the time. Kailangan nasa Pilipinas siya. Residente siya ng Pilipinas. And then the secretary, the requirement for a secretary is that just like a treasurer, resident siya, but at the same time, citizen. So resident citizen dapat ang isang corporate secretary. Resident of the Philippines and citizen of the Philippines. And the board of directors, the board of trustees may also elect such other officers among themselves as may be provided by the bylaws. Again, you may look at the bylaws and see for yourself ano ba bang pwede natin pagbotohan. O may vice president dito. Let's vote for a vice president. Or may nakalagay dito in auditor siya. So let's vote for an auditor. Nakalagay dito, gantong position. So, ano man yung position na yan, then i-vote mo siya. Maging part siya rather ng election ninyo. Election among the board of directors, board of trustees. Pipili sila ngayon sa isa't isa kung sino yung mag-serve bilang so and so. Okay? President, treasurer, secretary. So, meron naman tayo dito, if the corporation is vested with public interest, we all know that the board shall also elect a compliance officer. So, kailangan meron tayo compliance officer dito. Pag sabi compliance officer, as the term would imply, it is an officer of the corporation who sees to it that laws are faithfully complied with. So, dapat, usually, ang mga compliance officer, mga lawyers din, para they can see to it that the corporation and agent, si mga members ng board of directors, mga board of trustees, are complying with the mandatory requirements of the law. Siya mag-a-advise sa, hindi pa tayo sa kontrata na yan. Kasi, not compliant with the law. Kaya siya compliance officer. Sasabihin niya, magre-render siya ng mga opinion niya, saying na, ito dapat, okay yan. Yan okay kasi bawal yan sa batas. O mag-file tayo ng IDR natin on time. O mag-file tayo ng bayaran natin yung SSP sa pag-ibig ng mga empleyado. So yung trabaho ng compliance officer to see to it that the entity is complying with the mandatory requirements of the law. A person may hold 2 or more positions concurrently, except that no one shall act as president and secretary or president and treasurer at the same time, unless otherwise allowed by the revised corporation code. Naniniwala pa rin na batas natin sa kakayahan ng separation of powers. Sa accounting, first year pa lang tayo, tinuturuan na tayo dyan, di ba? Part of internal control is that dapat meron tayong tinatawag na separation of duties and responsibilities. Mahirap kasi na na may monopolyo ka doon sa mga posisyon. Hindi dapat nangyayari yan. Pero, sabi dito na Section 24, meron tayong prohibition doon sa president. Ang presidente ay hindi maaaring secretary din at the same time. Ang presidente ay hindi maaaring treasurer din at the same time. Yun yung pinagbabawal ng Section 24 as a general rule unless merong portion ng revised corporation code na pwede. But as a general rule, hindi siya pwede. Sir, pwede po ba secretary and treasurer at the same time? Pwede. Because it is not prohibited. That combination is not prohibited. What is prohibited is acting as a president at secretary at the same time or president and treasurer at the same time. Bawal yun. Bawal yun. The officers, the president, the compliance officer if required, the treasurer, the corporate secretary, the officers shall manage the corporation and perform such duties as may be provided by the bylaws and or as resolved by the board of directors. So pag yung board of directors, they came up with a policy, nila, o ganito dapat, ang decision na nila, o ganito dapat. ito ay within the duties of the, let's say, treasurer kasi patungkol to sa finances ng corporation. Papasa ngayon sa treasurer. Oh, sabi ng board of directors, lahat ng collection mo daw from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. ay dapat nakadeposita na. Yun yung resolution. So the treasurer will have to abide by the resolution of the board of directors or board of trustees, as the case may be. Okay? Section 25, within 30 days after the election of the directors, the trustees, and the officers of the corporation, the corporate secretary, or any other officer of the corporation shall submit to the Securities Exchange Commission the names, nationalities, shareholdings, and residence address of the directors, trustees, and officers so elected. So kapag nagkaroon ng election, itong si corporate secretary, again, kaya naman siyang additional na trabaho, kailangan niya mag-report sa Securities Exchange Commission kung sino ba itong mga nanalong bilang director, bilang trustee, or officer ng isang corporation. Okay? Which includes the names, pangalan nila, the nationalities, and the percentage. Usually, ginagawa ito, I think, para sa compliance with the laws. Laws on nationalized undertaking. Kasi di ba meron tayong mga business na limited lang yung ownership or interest na pwede for foreigners. So para malaman, maraming paraan para alamin yan. Pero isa sa mga paraan na naiisip ng SEC ay i-require natin itong mga corporation na mag-submit ng pangalan ng mga nanalo bilang director, mga bilang officer, pati yung nationality nila, and the corresponding interest over that corporation para malaman kung lumagpas na ba siya o hindi sa kanyang, ang tawag dito, interest na allowed for that nationalized undertaking. Again, hindi lahat ng korporasyon ay nationalized. Ibig sabihin na nationalized, may batas tayo nagsasabi na ganito lang yung maaaring panghawakan ng foreigner. Let's say, mass media. Ang mass media ay nationalized undertaking niya. Nationalized business siya. Kasi may requirement yung batas natin, constitution natin, 100% owned by Filipino citizens. So kung nag-election kayo, bigla kang nag-report, si Mr. A ay nanalo bilang director at president. Tapos ang nationality niya ay Indian national siya. Ang shareholdings na ay 51%. Magigit lang ngayon yung SEC. Teka lang. Hep. Sasabihin ng SEC. Di ba kayo ay engaged in mass media? Di ba under our system, bawal ang foreigner dyan kahit 1%? Bakit ganito ang sinabit niya? Ganun na. Tuloy-tuloy na yan. So, hindi naman lang chismoso ang SEC. Sabit mo nga kung sino yung pangalan na nanalo. Pagkakalat ko lang, hindi, wala. Pakialam actually kung sino ka. Ang importante sa SEC ay nakakomply yung mga batas natin. So, interesados lang malaman kung sino ba itong mga nanalo at ano yung nationality nila at ilang percent ang kanilang pamamay-ari over that corporation. Para na sisigurado ko ng SEC na hindi tayo nag-violate ng batas. And once na-discover niya na nag-violate kayo ng batas, then meron siyang kilos na gagawin. The non-holding of elections and the reasons thereof shall be reported to the Commission within 30 days from the date of the scheduled election. The report shall specify a new date for the election. It shall not be later than 60 days from the scheduled date. Diba sabi natin kanina, maaaring hindi magtuloy ang election dahil, let's say, for fortuitous event. Let's say, nagkaroon ng national blackout, supposedly, electronic means ang kanilang communication, remote ang kanilang voting. Paano tayo magtutuloy kung walang kuryente, di ba? Yun na yung essence ng remote communication. You are not on site and you are using your tablet or your computer or your laptop or your smartphone in order to participate. nagkataon naman na walang kuryente, how could you participate and how would the rest of the stockholders and the members would participate? So, hindi na kayo nagtuloy. Or maaari din na after magbilang ng corporate secretary, ay wala tayong quorum. Hindi tayo pwede magtuloy. So, may mga dahilan para hindi magtuloy yung election. Pero ang sinasabi ng Section 25, if hindi kayo nag-conduct ng election, kailangan nyo i-inform si SEC within 30 days from the date of the scheduled election yung fact na kayo ay hindi natuloy sa election at yung mga dahilan, or mga dahilan kung bakit hindi nyo siya tinuloy. So, 30 days is essential. 30 days din kasi dito. Bakit ko sinasabi itong 30 days na ito? Kapag nag-conduct ng election at may mga nanalo, trabaho ng corporate secretary na i-report sa SEC. Ito po ang mga pangalan ng nanalo. Ito po yung nationality ng mga nanalo. Ito po yung interest nila over the corporation. So and so. That is compliance by that corporation, actually by the corporate secretary, which has to be done within 30 days. Within 30 days. Yung 30-day period na yan ay ito din. So kanina, natuloy yung election, kaya ang i-report mo ay yung mga nanalo doon sa election. Pero in this situation, hindi natuloy yung election. So wala kang i-report na pangalan kasi nga hindi natuloy yung election. But within the 30-day period, kailangan mo pa rin pumunta sa SEC to inform the SEC na hindi kayo natuloy at ano yung naging dahilan kung bakit kayo hindi natuloy at kung kailan nyo itutuloy na yung nabinbin na election which cannot go beyond 60 days from the scheduled date. Hindi ka pwede mag-schedule ulit. Next year na po kami, hindi pwede. Dapat maximum 60 days from the original date na supposedly mag-election kayo pero na-postpone for whatever reason. So again, 30-day period material, natuloy, magre-report ka sa SEC. Kailangan mo sabihin sino nanalo at ano nationality nila at ilang percentage ang own ng mga tao na ito. Kung hindi natuloy, you still have 30 days. 30 days to do what? To report to the SEC that the corporation did not conduct an election, the reason for why they did not conduct an election, and the proposed date kung kailan nyo iuulitin or itatry uli na magkaroon ng election, which should not be more than 60 days from the original date of the intended election. Okay? 30 days na, whether natuloy o hindi. If if no new date has been designated, or if the scheduled election is likewise not held, the Commission may, upon the application of a stockholder, member, director, or trustee, and after verification of the unjustified non-holding of the election, summarily order that an election be held. Kapag hindi natuloy, pwede namang himasok yung Securities and Exchange Commission. Usually, hindi nagagawin yan. Hindi nanghihimasok ang SEC, not even the courts, hindi nanghihimasok ang SEC o mga korte sa internal affairs ng isang corporation. Bahala kayo dyan. Except kung may crime na nagaganap, syempre manghihimasok na sila. Pero kung nyari hindi kayo nagbotohan, so supposedly, or hindi kayo nag-meeting, supposedly pakialam ng SEC, hindi kayo nag-meeting, pakialam ng korte, edi wag, tinatamad kayo mag-meeting, so ganyan. Or, hindi gusto ng mga stockholder yung decision. For example, bakit brand X ang ginamit natin na kotse or bilhin natin kotse or delivery truck? Dapat brand B. Bakit bumoto yung mga board of directors ng brand A? A and B ba sabi ko? A. Bakit brand A? Dapat brand B. Hindi ako tiwala doon sa iniisip ng mga board of directors na ito. Hindi ka pwede pumunta sa korte para sabihin or sa SEC para sabihin sa kanila, mali po sila ng pinili. Brand B po talaga dapat, di po brand A. Sabi lang ng korte, wala kang pakialam. We don't care. Not even the SEC will care. Hindi kami manghihimasok dyan. Judgment yan ng board of directors. Hindi ka yung board of directors eh. So parang sa managing partner, ini-managing in a partnership rather, na managing partner in a partnership, di ba? Kung hindi mo masyadong bet yung mga gusto niya, unless done in bad faith, wala kang magagawa. The courts will not substitute its discretion. Kung yun yung gusto niya, yun yung gusto niya. If hindi niyo pala gusto yung mga decision niya, ba't siya binoto bilang managing director? So, ganun din dito. Kapag binoto mo siya as member ng board of directors, tapos yung decision niya, hindi ka masyadong agree, then kung hindi naman illegal yun, talagang hindi ka lang agree, hindi ka lang talaga agree sa naging wisdom ng board of directors, then wala kang masyadong magagawa. You cannot go to court and tell the court na palitan mo yung decision. Hindi. Sabi ng court, not even the Supreme Court will do that. Eh. Pero kasi tayong tinatawag na business judgment rule. Naalala ko siya bigla. So you have the business judgment rule. Sabi ng business judgment rule, the conduct of the business of a corporation is within the exclusive judgment or discretion of the board of directors. And the courts, not even the Supreme Court, and the courts, including the Supreme Court rather, will not intervene, will not change that business judgment, even if it is not favorable to the corporation. So for example, may dalawang pwedeng pag-utangan, yung isa BDO, yung isa BPI. 1 million parehas. Yung supposedly pwede sa BDO ay 10% yung interest, sa BPI 12%. Yung 12% yung pinili ng stockholders ng board of directors for whatever reason. Pinili na. So, disregarded na yung 10% ng BDO at pumasok with a contract of loan sa BPI at 12%. So, ikaw na stockholder, sabi mo, parang mali ata yun. Parang nalugi yung korporasyon. Pwede naman siyang umutang at 10% kasi yung 12% pa yung pinili. Can you go to court and ask the court, palitan nyo mga yung decision ng board of directors namin? Mali sila ng decision. Sabihin ng court, oo nga no, mag-agree pa yung court sa'yo, oo nga no, parang nalugi yung korporasyon ninyo. Dapat yung 10, utang yan eh, dapat 10% lang available ng perpetual. Pero sabihin ng court, although we understand na hindi dapat yun yung naging decision, but we have this rule, the business judgment rule, the business judgment doctrine, I don't know exactly pa anong tawag dyan. Yung discretion or yung wisdom ng board of directors cannot be interfered by the court unless they are doing something illegal. Then the courts will intercept. Bawal nang gawin yan. Illegal yan. Pero kung ang pag-uusapan ay business judgment, decision niya between two alternatives and you are not agreeable dun sa decision na yun, then wala kang maitutulong ang korte sa'yo. So going back, ang layo na napuntahan ko. Sa Section 25 dito, kapag yung kapag yung board ay mga stockholders ay hindi natuloy, yung election rather ng board ay hindi matuloy-tuloy. Supposedly yung korte hindi siya manghihimasok. Internal kasi. Yung matter of election is internal doon sa corporation among the stockholders. It's an internal affair. So the court will not interfere. Pero, sabi ko sa Section 25, the Commission, the SEC, may order the election. If tuloy-tuloy na kayo ay cancel ng inyong election, hindi kayo naglagay ng panibagong petsa or yung nilagay ninyo ay hindi na naman natuloy, yan. Kasi mga stockholder ng gigit-git na, ba't ba tagal naman? Tagal naman, puro reset. Yan. They can file an application with the SEC so that the SEC will order the conduct of the election. Bukod dyan, the Commission, the SEC, shall also have the power to issue such orders as may be appropriate, including orders directing the issuance of a notice stating the time and place of the election, designated presiding officer, and the record date or dates for the determination of the stockholders or members entitled to vote. So bukod dun sa order niya na ituloy yan, meron pang specific powers ang SEC o mag-issue ka ng order or ng notice directing informing the stockholders na matutuloy na ang election at kailangan mo ilagay yung lugar at yung petsa kung kailan nangyayari, etc. etc. So may gantong kapangyarihan ang SEC. Notwithstanding any provision of the Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws to the contrary, the shares of stock or membership represented at such meeting and entitled to vote shall constitute a quorum for purposes of conducting an election under this section. So yung mga nabanggit daw dito, yung inutos, di ba, ayaw, hindi matuloy-tuloy yung regular. So pwede namang, kapag may nag-apply doon sa SEC, pwede siyang manghimasok para utusan yung korporasyon na yung members na or stockholders na ituloy na ninyo yan. Yan, ituloy na ninyo yan. So sinasabi lang dito na kahit na sa ganung paraan nangyari yung election, sa ganung paraan dumaan sa pagsusumbong sa SEC, then yung mga shareholders or members in person or through proxy shall constitute a quorum for purposes of conducting an election under that provision of the Revised Corporation Code. Section 25. Should a director, trustee, or officer die, resign, or in any manner cease to hold office, the corporate secretary or the director, trustee, or officer of the corporation shall within 7 days from the knowledge thereof report in writing such fact to the commission. So may additional trabaho na naman yung corporate secretary. Kapag mayroon daw board of director, board of trustee, or officer na mamamatay, or magre-resign, or for whatever reason, mawawala dun sa kanyang opisina, si corporate secretary o pwedeng director or trustee or officer, pwedeng dapat pala, hindi pwede, dapat dapat within 7 days, so meron kang 1 linggo, binibigyan ka ng 1 linggo para ipaalam sa SEC na itong tao na ito ay namatay na, nag-resign na, or humiwalay na doon sa opisina. Okay, so tayo ay hihinto na muna, Section 25, para ating ma-manage ang ating lecture videos. Okay, so thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this lecture video. We will continue with Section 26 on the next lecture video. Thank you and goodbye.